of our weekly conversations with Cougars, and I've got one of my protectors, one of my classmates, one of my teammates, number 71, Kevin Collins, is with us tonight. Hey, Kevin, good to talk to you and see you, my friend.
Good to see you, my friend. Like you said, I do feel like I'm a protector. So when you're an offensive lineman, you're used to that role.
That's right. And one of the guys you butted heads against for a couple of years just joined us out of Auburn, Alabama, Ross Morris. Hey, Ross, good to see you, bud.
Hey, Ross, outstanding defensive lineman.
Yep. As they pushed you guys every day. But for those of you who don't know, Kevin's in the class of 86, my graduating year. He played offensive line, mainly right guard for his last 2 years of high school after transferring. But we're going to get into all that good stuff in a few minutes. But if you would, what I like to do, Kevin, starting out, is just kind of tell us about what's going on with you currently. Where do you live, work? Tell us about your awesome family, and then we'll jump back in the time machine and hit the good old days.
Okay, well, I live in Pike Road, and for those of you who don't know where that is, that's just right outside Montgomery. So we moved out here a couple of years ago. My mom and dad were actually living with us, so we bought a big enough place. They're in their 80s, so we bought a big enough place so I could look after them. And I work at Maxwell Air Force Base, and so I work for the headquarters for junior ROTC and ROTC in the Officer Training School. So we're all about, getting new lieutenants into the Air Force. So it's an educational type program. So I've been doing that for a long time now, but it's a very rewarding job, and I wouldn't be anywhere else. And I've got two kids. Kids, I mean, they're grown now, right?
Right.
So I've got a daughter, Claudia. She's actually 22, and she's in her last semester of nursing school at Samford University.
Very
so
good.
She's been working at Brookwood Hospital as a student nurse. Anyway, so she worked through COVID and all that. So she's been on the front lines with this whole pandemic. So I'm very proud of her. My son is a senior this year. He's at Trinity, Randy Ragsdale's old school. And very proud of him. He's a senior playing football, and they just, of course, started their season, and they're 2-0 so far, playing two of their, biggest rivals. So he's actually playing offensive tackle. And so I'm very proud of him. And then my wife, Paula, we've been married 26 years. And so she's originally from the Andalusia area. And then I met her in Montgomery. We got married, and we've been here ever since. So it's a good place to raise a family, and things are going well. Everybody's doing well.
Very, very good. Your son being at Trinity, he plays on Coach Ragsdale's field, or the field that's now named in his honor. He having spent 30 plus years at Trinity. Does your son have desires to play on the next level, or is this going to conclude his football career?
Well, if you ask him during football season, he's always burned out, right? So, football, my friend, is, this, it's changed a little bit since we were in school. It's become a year-round endeavor. So he's a big boy, 6'2", about 280. He could certainly, if he wanted to, play at that level. We're going to go through this season and see. It's not my job to make him follow my path. I want him to determine his own path. So it's got to be his decision. So I would answer that for you, but he hasn't actually told me yet. So that's,
well, if
it was clear. It was clear for me growing up.
Yeah.
That was a way for me to go to school.
Yeah.
But for him, I want him to do what he thinks is best for him.
And if it's meant to be, it'll play out that way. And if it's not, he'll find his next path, whatever that may be. That's such a healthy approach for both of you guys. We certainly wish him well this year at Trinity. Hopefully they'll make it all the way to the state. But guys, I'm talking with Kevin Collins, one of my protectors back in the day, class of 86. He was number 71, but he wasn't always a Northview Cougar. In fact, he transferred in just before 11th grade. Where were you before 11th grade, and what made you, or what led to you ultimately transferring to be a Cougar?
So, Bernard, I grew up in the Wicksburg community, and everyone that lives in Dothan, of course, knows where that is. I mean, it's grown a lot, since we were in school. At the time I was there, though, it was a 1A school. So small school, started out in first grade and had a lot of friends, of course, that I knew from the time, in fact, probably my parents knew they probably were in school with their parents.
Mhm.
So it was a generational thing. So it was a very difficult decision when I finished my sophomore year there. I started playing football. It's kind of strange. Back in those days, I couldn't actually play. I guess they called it the Pee Wee, where a lot of you guys, when you're played in the city or whatever, y'all probably playing sixth grade, seventh grade, something like that.
Yeah, until you went to middle school.
And I couldn't do that because the first year that I actually played, were eligible to play, was eighth grade because they had a weight requirement. And I couldn't be, I think it was like 135 pounds, and I was just a skosh over, as at that time. But so my first year playing football was eighth grade. And so I started as a ninth grader, actually. I was a pretty good sized kid by then, probably about 225 as a ninth grader. And then I played as a ninth grader and a sophomore there. And I think I had an idea then. I kind of wanted to play at the next level, or at least have an opportunity to do that. And transferring into the Dothan area seemed like, and it was a hard decision. Can you imagine just picking up and leaving all your friends that you've known your whole life and, grown up with, actually? And that was a very difficult decision, but it was the right one for me. So I transferred in, and it's, kind of a funny story is, so I transferred in, and where we lived over off of Trawick Road, which is close to Highway 52, I was just certain, we were all certain that I'd be going to Dothan High. I mean, that's on the south side of town, right? So, I went and met with Coach Golden, I think, who was the head coach at that time. And I was, like I told you earlier, I worked out with the team during the summer for a week. And it didn't come out until after that week, till I go to enroll, that the coach calls me up and said, son, I hate to tell you this, but you're zoned for Northview. I would love to have you, but I just can't. So, I mean, actually, if you lived across the street to the north, you could go to Dothan High. It was really odd. So, you know how zoning works. But so Coach Golden picked up the phone, called Coach Parrish, and then the rest at that point becomes history. So that's kind of how I wound up there at Northview. Not that, it just never occurred to me, not that I didn't know about Northview. It's just that I never thought that was an option, right? Just based on where I live.
Well, Dothan High's lost, Northview's game. We're glad you ended up on our side of the field, Kevin. And talk to us a little bit about, with Wicksburg being a 1A school at the time, you're transferring into a 6A school, Northview. The campus is already just built like a junior college. It's so enormous. I remember back in the day playing at Wicksburg and during baseball season. So I remember how that campus looked. You could put about 5 Wicksburgs on the Northview campus. But what was it like for you? You're already 2 years into high school. What was that like transitioning over?
Well, Bernard, how many did we have in our graduating class? 320, 330, something like that?
Somewhere right in there.
So my graduating class at Wicksburg would have been about 32 or 3. So that tells you about all you need to know. So, I mean, I'll have to admit, when I was overwhelmed, but Coach Parrish had a really unique approach, and I really appreciate a lot of what he did. He immediately, I think, recognized that I needed sort of, not maybe a mentor, but I needed a buddy, right? I needed somebody to help introduce me, somebody who was a lineman. And so one of the first people that he introduced me to was Manny Venegas. And Manny just sort of took me under his wing and introduced me and kind of got me acclimated with the football program. And of course, we worked out all summer, and he actually became one of my best friends. And I owe him a lot to help me through that transition, because it was overwhelming. I didn't know a soul. So you go from an environment where you're completely comfortable, you know everybody, you know what to expect. I was almost like a fish out of water, because it was like you said, the campus was just, it was huge, and there were just, people everywhere. And it was different, but I give Manny a lot of credit for helping me through those early days, especially once school actually started.
Well, I tell you, many people give Manny Venegas, Dr. Manny Venegas,
Doctor.
a lot of credit. Manny is a physician in South Carolina. I've been asking him to come on the show. We're just trying to work out some times. But you're right. There was no finer teammate, except maybe I may put him as a tie with Keith Rice, who says to tell you hello.
Oh, hey, Keith, good to see you, my friend. Well, and in addition to that, everybody, I mean, you and all the linemen, everybody was so welcoming there. I never really felt like a stranger. Of course, you always go through, you're the new guy and all that. But I mean, the whole team, treated me like I wasn't the new guy, and that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And so it was as smooth a transition as I could have hoped for.
Well, Kevin, I really had an ulterior motive, as you could imagine. I'm seeing you walk into the team. I'm like, that guy's going to protect me. Game on. Let's go. Let's go. Kimberly Holt Leverett. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce your name right. Says to tell you hello and says War Eagle. So thank you. Guys, I'm talking with Kevin Collins, number 71, class of 86, and we're transitioning from Wicksburg to Northview, and football is football. And in the Deep South and high school in Alabama in the 80s, it was serious business, whether you're at Wicksburg, Houston Academy, Northview, it didn't matter where you were. We took the sport very seriously. And Kevin, you had always, and I suspect even today, you had a quiet leadership ability about yourself. You spoke with your actions much more than your words. Every team has its rah-rahs, but every team that's successful also has its quiet leaders. And it's those who just show by doing. And that, to me, was always one of your better qualities, particularly our senior year when it didn't start out so great, ended up pretty great, but I don't want to jump just quite yet to senior year. I want to talk about the academic transition for you. You'd already been in high school for a couple of years. You're getting acclimated from a football standpoint, which probably could have been the easier transition of the two, because football, like I said, is football. You're going to get hit or you're going to hit somebody on every play. But from an academic standpoint, how was Wicksburg? I mean, how was the transition from Wicksburg into Northview's academic situation?
Well, of course, the classes are bigger, but I mean, and you have what I was really surprised with was I think I was actually well prepared.
Mm-hmm.
They may have been a small school, but they certainly had good quality teachers. And, and Northview, even at that time, I mean, when you graduated from Northview, you were prepared to go to Auburn or Alabama or wherever. Mm-hmm. If you weren't, that it was your own fault.
Right.
So, but that transition really wasn't that big of an issue, other than, I had new teachers, new classes, and, more people in the classes and all that. And Coach Parrish understood that he knew that academics were important to me and my family, which is why he was so smart to put me with Manny, because Manny was, of course, one of the most intelligent people on the entire team.
Yeah.
He was just a great example. And
but didn't you find it just a little odd that Manny would wear his watch to practice? Wasn't that just no? I kid, but he did. He did have a habit of wearing his watch and would end up having to give it to one of the coaches because he just inevitably, it was just part of his uniform.
A creature of habit, my friend. That's all I can tell you there. I don't know.
Right. That's right. Go ahead, Kevin.
But yeah, absolutely. But I guess if you ever noticed, the more intelligent you are, the more idiosyncratic you become. So maybe that explains a lot. He was just too smart for the rest of us.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we had actually our senior class was an exceptionally smart academic wise class. I bet if you look at the GPA across the board, it would compete with any of the 41 teams seniors that Northview ever fielded. But speaking of a person who knows all the secrets and all the GPA, Shirley C says to tell you hello.
Hello, Shirley.
She, again, Kevin, it's tough competition. I say it almost every week, but right now, Shirley C's discussion or conversation that I had last year with her is still the highest number of views, and it's not even close. It's crazy. But thank you, Shirley, for always showing up and being there for us.
That tells you how much impact she had on Northview High School right there.
And continue on the community. Absolutely. But let's put Shirley aside. She's had her day. This is your day tonight. Kevin, let's talk about playing time. Did you play JV? Did you play varsity that first year? Were you immediately eligible 11th grade? I really don't, I'm a little fuzzy on that.
No, I mean, I just transferred in and immediately played varsity that first year. And, you remember, we didn't have the greatest season that first year, for a lot of reasons. I mean, never blown out of any game, so it just really couldn't get over the hump. I don't really remember why. Yeah. I guess after the senior season, the junior season kind of has become a blur. Maybe it's but I don't remember a whole lot about that season. It just seemed like we struggled a lot.
We did. We went 4-6 that year. It was the first season that wasn't a winning season. I want to call out a couple of the finals to you. I got to put my old man readers on. We got blown out by Lee 28-7. We beat Kendrick. Sidney Lanier beat us. Chalkawhatchee beat us. Then Central Thomasville beat us. We got beat by everybody right there in a row. We went several games. Enterprise blew us out. Then we finally beat Foley, Blunt, Dothan, and then lost to Carroll for the first time in the school's history. So we were 4-6. Did you play any JV that year?
I did not. I played varsity, and it's interesting that when I hear all that, I guess at some point I've kind of blocked some of that out of my memory and just kind of concentrated on the senior year. But that just kind of put a knot in my stomach when you talked about our schedule that year. But that's okay. I'll tell you what, though. I think that and I know that we learn more from adversity than we ever do through success. That could be a lot of reason why that returning senior class was so driven and so hungry and so motivated, because that didn't sit well with any of us.
No, it didn't, because our 10th grade year, when you were still at Wicksburg, we had an undefeated JV team. We had the makings of a very good nucleus of varsity players. Some got to play a little bit that year on varsity, but most of our senior class played at the JV level. Then we got some playing time a little bit. Some of us got more. Lawrence certainly got a ton, Cassie, etc. But you're right, that junior year was not a good season for any of us. It left a bad taste in our mouth. But going into our senior year, and I still have got you guys, I got Chris Lee. I know you guys flop sometimes, but I got Chris Lee on my blind side. Then I got Dewey. I got Mark Smith. I got you. I got Pat Fitch, supported by Charles Bunton, Tommy Dixon, Keith Rice, and I know I'm leaving out one player. I can't think of it right now. No, Reggie. It was Reggie. Anyway, you guys just seemed to work in sync so well. It was a new offense. We were putting in that quick hitting and quick passing offense that really required you guys to be as cerebral as any other players on the team, because you had to know your zones. So talk a little bit about working as a unit, getting ready for that season. We put in that run and shoot. We had all that offensive talent around us, but all you guys had to do was a lot. But talk about the unity of that unit.
Well, you're right. I mean, we had a completely new offense, and it was all new blocking schemes, a whole new philosophy. So, backing up a little bit, I'm going to give, Coach Parrish and really all the assistant coaches a lot of credit, because it takes a lot of planning, a lot of foresight to look at your talent, which we had a very talented team, and figure out what scheme, what philosophy will help us maximize that talent. And then implement it during one off season. And that's just, if you think about it, what a tremendous task to undertake. I mean, it was brand new for all of us. And in that blocking scheme, back in those days, offensive linemen couldn't use their hands, and that was kind of a handicap. But we had to learn. There was a lot of pulling with the guards. They would even, I guess it was legal to do some cut blocks, chop blocks, that kind of thing, especially when you're,
Then
it was legal. It wasn't dirty, but so it was legal to do that. But it was a lot of pulling, a lot of, trying to force multiply at the point of attack. And because he knew we're going to be facing teams that are just going to be tremendously big on the defensive line, good speed at linebacker. And, we needed to maximize, I guess, our athleticism.
Yeah.
And it's a great scheme for the people that we had. And when you talk about a team, yeah, you can have great players, and we had great players on offense and defense, but you got to be more than the sum of the parts, right? If you're not more than the sum of the parts, you're a mediocre team.
Mhm.
And so I give them a lot of credit for coming up with a game plan that fit our personnel. And it really did. Now, did it start off great? Probably not. And you will see that as we progressed. I know we had injuries, and I don't want to conflate the two.
Yeah.
But as we went through the season, we improved and we got better at it, and we started responding better. And I think that became the difference as we became better at executing the game plan, I think ultimately. And then the just rock solid play of our defense and special teams,
Mhm.
it all, I guess, peaked at the right time for us.
For those of you who don't know our team, our seniors of 86, the team of 85, the offensive line alone had several players with 3.8 to well over a 4.0 GPA. And when you have such smarts on the line, they got it. They got it, and they were able to communicate. The other part, though, Kevin, that you mentioned that is so important is that you were right about the coaches recognized the weaknesses as well as the strengths. We switched offenses. We were able to maximize the speed that we had on offense. And no one was doing the offense that we put in our senior year. It was based on the run and shoot that was in the USFL at the time. I think it was the Houston Gamblers. I'm not sure where exactly it came from. I know I went with Coach Parrish and Coach Andrews to Atlanta. We learned the plays from a coach at a Holiday Inn. We spent a whole day getting all the plays, brought them back, and just
I've heard that story. That's an amazing story, actually. So you have to learn it. Yeah, that gives new credence to that whole saying. I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I'm an expert.
That's exactly right. But it's so very true. And Kevin, we get into our first game of senior year. And of course, it gets pushed off from a Friday to a Saturday to a Monday. Because of the hurricane. We played on Labor Day, middle of the day. It had stormed that weekend and even that morning a little bit. It could not have been more humid in the city of Dothan when we played.
And it blew in mosquitoes the size of Israeli jets. I mean, it was horrible.
Awful. And of course, the first series, about the third or fourth play, the worst thing that we could have happen as a team is our leader, Lawrence, breaks his arm in a play that should never have happened, but it did. And we immediately had to bring up, next man up. O'Shawn Legree, Mark Saffel, a lot of those sophomores got thrown into a spot that had to learn, on the job training, if you will.
And didn't O'Shawn suffer a spleen injury during that game as well?
He did. He got nailed. He sure did.
My old buddy
Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was the number 2 team in the state at that time, probably one of the top 15 teams in the Southeast, if not the country. They had Larry Ware, they had Quentin Riggins, one of your former future teammates. They had all kind of awesome talent.
I was going to say Quentin Riggins was probably responsible for some of that. He was the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet, but he was an assassin on the football field.
He was, and we're going to come back to Quentin later in the year because we ended up getting him, but it wasn't his fault. His coach never changed the defense, but we'll come back to that in a minute. So we lose that game 14-8. We go on to our next week. We end up 1-3 going into homecoming.
Well, back up that game, we had 2 touchdowns called back. I mean, it was just an ugly game under horrible conditions. So, but yeah, the injuries did more damage to us than the game ever did.
It did. You know what that game really kind of showed? It was a preview of how our season, frankly, was going to go for the next at least 13 games. There were no real blowouts, maybe 1 or 2 where we got the best of a team. We certainly were never blown out because Willie Banks and Cassie led the defense, and they really kept us in every game. They really, really were the heart and soul of the team, at least defensively, and kept us there. But let's see, I always forget the order of the games. I know after after the league game, we beat Kendrick. Well, Kendrick really wasn't a strong program for many years.
Out of Columbus, I do remember that game.
But
Absolutely.
City Lanier always seemed to get us every year in the 80s. They beat us 14-9. Then we lose a tough one, Chalk-to-Ahatchee, thanks to my interceptions. I don't want to talk about that. But then Central Thomasville rolls in. They're number 9 in the state of Georgia, and that's our homecoming, and we get our leader back. And I will never forget the change in attitude, at least on offense, probably the whole team.
Did we go to Thomasville, or I know that we did go, maybe that was junior year that we actually beat one of the Georgia teams at their homecoming, but maybe that was junior year.
Yeah, that was the year before, but that I think, but yeah, Central Thomasville was our homecoming.
Boy, whoever scheduled that wasn't too bright, huh?
No, but if you look back, we played almost every game we played. I think 11 of the teams we played that year were ranked in the top 10 in their respective states at the time we played them. So there was no breaks. But what I specifically remember is Lawrence practicing leading up to homecoming, and he was getting a little more comfortable. He still had that blue wrapped protective thing over the cast, but he was able to do a little bit more. But it just seemed to give us that spark. And the school spirit never went away. But even better than that, within the team, it's easy to look back now. At the time, when you're going through all of that, you're kind of inside the eye of the hurricane.
Exactly.
But I want to, from your perspective, what was the mindset, if you remember those first 4 games that we were kind of struggling through?
Well, we knew we had injuries, and we knew that it was going to especially disrupt us offensively. I mean, there's no way you can suffer, between O'Shawn and Lawrence. I mean, the 2 of your best players, and it's just hard to overcome that and function normally, right? It's we weren't, we had a lot of good players. They were young. We just didn't really have the depth to overcome that. They were just integral, to our offense. Mm-hmm. So we struggled, but struggling is one thing, but I would never say we felt there was no defeatism on that team at all. There was never, things were not going well. We were 1-3 at some point, but did you ever hear grumbling or finger pointing or any of that? It's just like we knew that things were going to get better. It is just hard to explain. It's almost an intangible that in our senior class, I think, was unified that if we kept working and we kept improving and if we followed the game plan, that things were going to improve. They were going to we had hard games coming. Enterprise, was coming, and the whole meat of our area schedule was coming. Yeah. But I think everybody felt like that we were still in control of our destiny, especially if we could just get some players back and get more time with that offensive scheme. And we knew our defense was so good, and like Willie and Cassie and all, everybody, they were going to keep us in the game. But we needed to do what we needed. If the offense could do. If we could kind of hold up our end of the deal, we would start winning football games.
Yeah, you're so right. It's analogous to in baseball when you're hitting and pitching kind of catch up with each other. Then you have a cohesive team. It was the offense trying to catch up.
You have that wonderful Zen moment when you're in the zone, right?
Well, we certainly found that homecoming. And speaking of homecoming, number 74 says hello to number 71, your partner in crime on the right side, Pat Fitch.
Yeah. Good to see you, Patrick. It's been too long, my friend.
And I want to welcome younger brother Stephen Collins is watching with us. Hey, Stephen, and happy belated birthday, bud. Hope you're doing well. Well, let's move on from homecoming. You're right. We have the meat of the rest of the season lined up, which was our nemesis. Enterprise was right after homecoming. I'm not sure Coach Parrish meant to schedule it that way, but for the first time in many years, we got the better of Enterprise and beat them 20-19. And that's a game I'll never forget.
Was that like 2 overtimes or something like that?
It was.
And honestly, somebody, and I apologize if people get mad, they may have had more talent than we did. They were a great team. They had a coach that had been there forever. They've been doing the same thing for a long time. But I think we just outplayed them that night. We wanted that game more than they did. We get some people back, and it to us, or to me, I think that was probably the turning point of our season right there, because we take on somebody that probably, and we have talent, but they're probably end to end a more talented team than us. They have to come to our place, and I think that that was a pivotal moment in our season.
Absolutely. We had the X factor, and he wore number 1 on his jersey, and he went on to Florida State and then played in the pros for 10 years. Because when we got him the ball, you didn't know if he was going to run it, throw it, or what he was going to do with it. But in that second overtime, he found Hogan in the back of the end zone, that little dipsy do or whatever coach called that. And that put us ahead, and we held on for the double overtime 2019 win. And then
I remember about that game. Going into that game, they had an Alabama prospect. I don't know if you remember Charlie Dare. Charlie Dare was
he was huge.
Yeah, like 300 pounds back then. And Coach Parrish and of course Coach Sellers challenging me that we had to keep this guy under control. Yeah. And so that was my mission for that game, is to make sure that he was not in the backfield and he wasn't making tackles. And so that, and Coach Sellers had a really unique way of challenging the linemen like that, to make it, kind of mano a mano type matchups. And that made it a lot of fun.
Let's sidetrack our season and talk about Coach Sellers. I love that man. He was an awesome coach. He wasn't my coach, but he worked directly with the guys protecting me. What do you remember about Coach Sellers? You mentioned a little bit about him, but I remember his voice would get so high when he'd get all jacked up on emotion.
Oh, yeah. He was probably the most emotional coach that I ever had, right? So, I mean, of course, he was praising you when you did well, and he was right there to criticize you when you're not. So, he was fair on both sides like that. But, I mean, it was just hard not to be engaged when Coach Sellers was on the field. So he knew how to get that effort out of his players on the practice field. And, he was a good mentor. And certainly just a extreme personality, right? I mean, just on and off the field.
Do you remember Keith reminded us? Do you remember one of his sayings was "Use them timbers"?
Use those timbers, absolutely. I think I still have nightmares about that, but that's okay.
Yeah,
it stuck with me.
Good stuff. Well, after Enterprise, we took on Foley, and you may or may not remember, but we beat them at Foley the year before. Last minute score. Snake bit them at Foley. No, excuse me, the other way around. We beat them at home our junior year. We went 99 yards. Chris Holmes catches a pass at the end of the game to beat them our junior year. We go there our senior year and again beat them in the last minute of the game to, I think, either put us in overtime to eventually win it from Clark, or he kicked a late field goal. But
and I don't know if you remember, Foley was another team that had a lot of D1 prospects on that team. I mean, they had a really good defensive line, and I would say that us as a group really kind of kept them in check all night long. Yeah. And because that was one of the challenges that I remember Coach Parrish, Coach Sellers talking about, and I forget numbers and all that, but I mean, he said, this guy, little legitimate D1 prospect, he's quick. He's not huge, but he's, really quick. He's going to be in the backfield unless you do your job. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, every game they always found a way to make sure that we felt adequately challenged. How about that?
Well, she hasn't said anything tonight, but she certainly has said it many times, many ways in the past. On behalf of my mother, I want to thank you for not allowing me to get hit too many times in that year. She's watching right now. That's why I had to say it. But after
hey, just think how good we could have been if we could have used our hands, my friend. That's like cheating now.
That's right.
That's what I keep telling my son, use those hands. I couldn't even use my hands.
Mm-hmm. Back in my day,
he doesn't like coaching advice from the old man. So
no. But I'll tell you, we go on from Foley to Blunt. We blow them out. It's one of our few blowouts. Then I really think this is where the season again takes a turn. We take on Dothan High. We lose in overtime, partly due to some of my screw ups, but that's okay because we lose that game. We then blow out Carroll, but then because we don't come in first in the area, it puts us second. First in the area is Dothan.
And I want to back up just a little bit about Dothan High.
Yeah.
And this may not be the case, but it's kind of plagued me over the years why we lost that game. I think, and you shouldn't even think like this about a crosstown rival. We may have overlooked them just a little bit. Dothan High had a great team. Okay. Reason I know they had a great team. All right. Robert E. Lee that same year invited Dothan High up there for their homecoming. Okay. That was their homecoming game. That was their, okay, well, wave to all the parents, and all the festivities type game. Dothan High didn't even let them score that night. 17-0, beat Robert E. Lee at Crampton Bowl. Okay. So we should have, well, I say should have. I kind of think like we may have looked past them a little bit, but I don't know. It's just hard to.
Rivalry games, you never know. As well as
just think about the talent that was on that team, though.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Teapot Brown was on that team, was he not? I mean, I forget all the names and all that, especially, but they had a lot of talent on that team, especially defensively, and they certainly gave us fits.
They had Alex Thomas. They had Ray Gibson. They had
Alex,
Donald Battle. They had.
Sorry, Alex.
They had so many guys. They had Dennis Tillman was on there, one of the finest running backs. They had a very talented team.
So, like you said, we made some mistakes and we helped them out a little bit. And that's the one game I kind of feel like that we should not have lost. We should have won that game. But, it, like you were about to say, it was ultimately worked out to be for the best.
Well, you may or may not remember, halfway through the fourth quarter, I throw an interception to Ray Gibson. Ray then pitches it to Teapot, who winds his way down the sideline, Dothan High sideline. And I was determined to make the tackle, and I did. He didn't score, but Teapot hit me harder than I was ever hit in organized football. I look up and I don't see anything except black sky, but I know we were both out of bounds. But Teapot was a phenomenal athlete. But they end up scoring. We tie the game late on a Clark Lopez field goal, but we lose in overtime. But it was fortuitous that we did, because we then go play at Opelika and stun the world because they're number one in the state.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about a game. I know that the coaches, Coach Perry Schaefer mentioned that they have the meeting in the playoff committee and all of that, and they hear the coaches from Opelika talking about the draw they get in the first round, and it's Northview, and they just kind of snicker or whatever.
Well, we're 6-4. They're 10-0. They've got Sean Smith, one of your future teammates. They've got a wealth of talent.
Oh, they're so talented, Bernard, that coach dies at that game. Okay. Because there's so many, between, Sean Smith and Greg Taylor and, some other folks that Coach Dye himself, and it wasn't a long drive anyway, but Coach Dye and half of the Auburn, staff were there at that game, which kind of gave me ultimately one of my inroads, but I'll talk about that later. But yeah, I mean, they were a very talented team. They're like you said, number one in the state, and all the experts, gave us like zero chance. I bet if you'd have had a predictor, which they do that now, they didn't do it then, they would have said 0%, right?
Yeah, or if there was a negative number, we might have been in that column. But then, not fortuitous for him, but Bo Peep gets hurt at the Dothan High game. James Joseph, one of your future teammates, and goes into the pros, a phenomenal running back, nice guy, but he doesn't get to play against us. We beat Central Phoenix City, another extremely tough team, 10-0 in the second round. And
I like to think with our defense, it wouldn't have really mattered. I mean, he was a great running back. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from that, but I've heard Dothan High people talking about that. Oh, we softened them up for you and all that kind of thing. But still, I mean, I like to think, at least in my mind, that even if they had him, we would have found a way, because at that point, we were finding ways to win where none really existed.
That's what I was just getting ready to say. By this point, we're really starting to click on all phases of the game. And of course, we go to Lee, rematch, third round at Crampton Bowl. And that's the game that really put a lot of us on the map. We come from way behind in the fourth quarter. And this is where it brings me back to Quentin Riggins. McCracken never changed the defense. he had a 5 or 6 man line, one linebacker and the rest DBs. And we just kept throwing those slants, and Quentin's head was on a spin. As great of an athlete as he was and as quick as he was, he couldn't get to those passes. And Hogan catches 3 touchdowns. We win late 28-27, but I have a very funny, and you're going to remember this. We went for 2 late in the game. Back then, a fumble or an interception, the defensive team couldn't advance it back for any points.
That's right.
I throw a tipped interception that Quentin catches. He runs right by me as I'm going off the field. I could have easily just tackled him or pushed him, but I knew the rule. Well, Quentin takes off the other way, and this is clearly on the videotape. It's fantastic. Hogan chases him from the other side of in the backfield, from the end zone, chases Quentin. They do a zigzag the whole way. David tackles him on like the 2 and then falls out. And I think ultimately Robert Ely was assessed a delay of game penalty, but it was just one of those, one more piece of excitement. But the game wasn't over. It wasn't over until Michael Henry recovers the flea flicker, which ended up being a fumble. Could we relax that we had secured the 3rd round victory?
Well, we didn't know they could throw the ball, right? So, I mean,
Right.
they had done nothing but run it all night, right at our defense. And we were just shocked that they even tried a trick play. So, yeah, I mean, that was a great play by him because, we were probably a little bit off guard. Did they ever throw the ball? I don't think so.
They might have thrown 3 passes up to that point because they had Larry Ware, who's extremely effective, ended up being the next year. He was Mr. Football in Alabama and went to Georgia and had a great career in college. But you're right, until Mike Henry ended up with that ball. And truly, it is true, Kim, that's probably where we really got the name Cardiac Cougars given to our team. But it was at that point, we're now headed to the semifinals against Fairhope. And once again, Lawrence saves my bacon because remember, it was a muddy game. We were late in the game. I drop what should have been just a routine handoff. I drop it. Lawrence picks it up, still ends up scoring, but Clark kicks the field goal in overtime to send us to the state.
I want to back up just a little bit on the league game, because Anthony Brown and I, of course, we're such good friends. And, talking about that game with him years later, in the going into the 4th quarter, all the starters had taken their shoulder pads off. They were waving to their parents up in the stands. Coach McCracken had already pulled the first team out. That's how over. But I don't remember any of us, I know we're behind, ever thinking that it was over. I mean, obviously that we had not a good first half. We were trying to run the ball at them. I give Coach Parrish a lot of credit for, adjusting the scheme and coming back in the second half. And that made all the difference in the world because it is big and physical as they were up front. And with, Quentin, of course, back there like a predator, running at Lee is hard. Okay. It just is. And adjusting that game plan made all the difference in the world.
I don't know if you remember when we started the first of our drives in the 4th quarter, Chris Lee famously says, well, we got him where we want him. Let's go do something.
Absolutely. Yeah, but that was prophetic, right? I mean, he actually was right because we had lulled them into this false sense of security. Not that was part of the game plan, of course, but certainly, I mean, there was nobody in the huddle that I don't remember anybody saying, oh, well, we're done for the season. Let's just pack it up and go home. We had none of that, right? I mean, it was just.
It was very businesslike. Even in those close games, we'd already been through 4 overtime games leading up to that game. And then we'd have a 5th overtime game, the Fairhope game. But
it was more like, okay, guys, we're in a hole. What are we going to do about it? We got to do something. We're not going to lose. I mean, that's not an option.
Yeah.
So, with that mentality where, okay, whatever, we're just going to do what it takes to do to win. That went a long way that whole season.
It really did. And I want to lead up. I want to get your memories, if you have any, from outside of playing football, just being in the school or in the community in that October, November time period. This is, I wouldn't say by any means uncharted territory because the 81 team certainly had been there. But it had been a few years. It was uncharted for all of us. Now it's our turn. But I have lots of vivid memories about being in the community, just talking with people. What was it like for you, whether you were at church or in the neighborhood or at the mall and those kind of things?
Well, like you said, I mean, even if you weren't, a Northview fan or, you didn't have kids that go there, there was certainly a sense of excitement all over Dothan. Now, anywhere you went, if anybody knew you're a football player, it was at church. I mean, you could be walking around the mall if you had your jersey on or somebody knew who you were. I mean, the excitement when especially a 6A school, right, is going, to the championship game, it's palpable. And everybody, the whole community, Dothan is a lot bigger now, but even at that time, it was just a big community. And, there was a lot of people that knew everybody. And I don't think there was anybody in the whole town that didn't know what was going on. So the excitement level, was just tremendous. And like you said, I don't think you could go anywhere without, somebody asking you about the game and how you felt or, how things were going in the playoffs. And, it was a tremendous time to be on that team.
In my mind's eye, 30 plus years later, I'd like to tell you, we didn't do any schoolwork during that time. We just did football and just bathed it. That was not the truth. The teachers kept teaching. We kept having to do our studies, but somehow it just all fit in. And you're right.
You still spent downtime with your friends, You still did all the normal things that you can squeeze in during the season. I mean, life goes on, but that becomes your focus, right? I mean, we were all focused on those playoffs.
Do you remember the Tuesday trip to Legion Field the week of the state game?
I absolutely do. You step out there and it's just like, of course, you play at Rip Hughes and it's a good size venue. You play at Crampton Bowl. That's a bigger venue. You step out on Legion Field and it's just like, even though you've been to games there, but you're down there on the field, it's surreal because, sitting in the stands is a lot different than walking out on the field, especially when you have your gear on and know that you're about to be involved. And I remember the whole thing about, us having to play on turf for the first time and how we were all unsure about that. And then nobody played on turf. Now it's quite common, of course, but that was kind of a little concern, right?
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I'd been to the Iron Bowl the Saturday before the Tuesday that we went up there. But you're right, sitting in the stands, that's different. I had been to USFL games at Legion Field to see the Stallions, particularly when Doug Flutie had come to play, and Herschel with the New Jersey Generals. Again, you're in the stands or you're walking around the perimeter. It's different when you're inside the fence, when you're feeling the basically cement with a little bit of turf under your feet.
That was the hardest turf ever. I think all the linemen, had the burns on our elbows on our hands and all that. It was not a good playing surface in those days. I'm sure it's tremendously better, a lot better than that now. But you're just talking about, just the when you walk out there, I mean, all you can see is just you look up and there's stands everywhere. I mean, it's I don't know. You feel very small. How about that?
And by the time our game came around on Saturday, I'd love to tell the world that there were 60, 70,000 people there. In reality, it was probably 22, maybe 24,000. And it seemed like the entire city of Dothan had turned out because by the time we were able to absorb who and what was up there, it just seems so much bigger for us 18-year-olds having never played in front of that big of a crowd. But that game ended up being so different than any of the 5 or 6 games we had just played.
Yeah, it was just almost like we didn't know. And of course, you know how it starts, and I won't recap all that. And we kind of start out, and they score on us right away, and we're all kind of thinking, well, this is a little odd because our defense is a lot better than that.
Yeah.
But then after the whole scoop and score thing, and then the game just completely turns around, it was strange. I didn't know how to react to that. We are playing, supposedly the best team that we played all year, and it's almost a blowout.
Well, it was 25-7 at half.
At half.
Yeah.
And we didn't, I just remember, at halftime, and I'm sure you do too. I mean, the coaches were like, don't let up, keep fighting, because this thing can easily turn around.
You're so right. Leading up to the game, I truly thought we were going to end up playing J.O. Johnson, who at the time was the number 2 team in the country. They got stunned by Huffman the week before, I believe. Now, 2 really key things that occurred. Obviously, you said after they had already scored on the opening drive, they were driving again. Then Bobby Estes hits the pitch. Aristotle picks it up and goes 90+ yards. That turns the game. But the last play of the first half, I think I have this right. I have to go back and watch. The last play of the first half, I'm begging Coach Parrish, Hogan can beat this guy. And he did. And we scored again to put it up to 25-7. But you're right. That halftime was, we don't know what to do. It's kind of like.
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, it's like we've never been here before. How do we act?
Yeah.
And I don't think, I think the coaches, all they really could come up with is we need to keep doing what we're doing. Don't need to let up for a second. And it was a very surreal experience. And like you said, I guess other than a couple of games, we hadn't been in that position at all season. So we're used to, but it was really strange because it was almost like Huffman didn't watch our offensive game film or something. I mean, it's like everything we did, and with Hogan, that nobody could cover him. You were throwing the ball well. We were running the ball well. Yeah, especially the end arounds. All that was working.
Isaac had a really sharp run, a long run. LaRue had a nice run. But you're right, Hogan. They just couldn't match his speed. Hogan had 3 touchdowns. He was named the MVP of the game, and rightfully so. And the third of which was about 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. But by that point, it was now 32-7 or something like that. They scored again late. But I can remember vividly those last 5 minutes of the game. We finally got to do what Anthony and them did a little prematurely. We came off field because it was very important to coach and the rest of the coaches that everybody get in. That everybody be able to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was a tremendous decision. I give him a lot of credit. Now, I will say this about my friend Anthony. I learned my lesson. I did not take off my shoulder pads. Okay. That was bad juju to take off your shoulder pads before the end of the game. So.
And Kimberly, who reminds me, I don't ever want to forget the support, not only from the cheer squads, but the band was the whole year was just so tremendous. And really just when you're under Rip Hughes pregame and you're getting ready mentally and physically stretching and doing all, and you hear the band strike up and all the student body right over above us in the Holmes clubhouse, that's what it's all about. That's where it gets you flowing.
Well, and you think about this, I mean, you always talk about how the football team did, and, that's fine and all that, but you think about how hard the cheerleaders work, how hard, the band people work. I mean, they were out there on those hot days just like we were, right? Oh, yeah. And, it takes a lot of support and, to put on it's a communal experience, right? Between the cheerleaders and the band and the fans. I mean, we always had, even on road trips, just excellent attendance for our games. Okay. So, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better season and support from everyone.
Now, much like my age difference with my middle brother, Robert, was 3 years. You also had a younger brother, Stephen, who was in the football program. Was Stephen the same? Was he 3 years behind or 2 years?
He's 3 years, but he graduated in '89. So I guess
he would have been a freshman. He would have been on the freshman team. Talk a little bit about that dynamics. You're going through it on the varsity level. He's coming through on the 9th grade level, but he's soaking it up, I'm sure, like my brother Rob was. What about those dynamics during that time period with you two?
So Stephen had a little bit different experience because he actually got to go to Honeysuckle and, played some middle school football. So that helped him kind of acclimate, going into high school. But yeah, of course, it was tremendous when we could kind of both ride to school together and, kind of spend that time together and have him over on the football team and all that kind of thing. We never really were close enough at age to play at the same time, but, I certainly when I went to Auburn and all that, I of course followed everything he did, and followed Northview, of course. But yeah, I mean, Steve and I, just like brothers are, we're always, have been very close, and just he was. I think Coach Perry said, Stephen was about a 205 pound center at Northview, just pound for pound one of the best linemen he ever had. He just gave that effort. Not really a big player, but just gave 100% all the time.
But let me ask you this: you guys rode to school together your senior year, his freshman year. Did you have the same rule riding to school that I did with my brother Rob? I was not a morning person. I still am not. I had a no speaking in the car rule. What a jerk I was, all the way to school. And I also had Chase Letcher in the car with me. He lived next door to us, behind us, but there was no talking.
Yeah. Well, talking really wasn't much of an option. And I'll tell you why. I don't know if you remember, but when I was in high school, I had a 64 Mustang. And that thing the engine had been rebuilt. It was fast as lightning. Steve was just more trying to hold. There was no seatbelts in this car, right? That was before they literally put seatbelts in. And he was just trying to hold on, going around the circle every morning. He wouldn't speak because he was too focused on, watching traffic, because I was not a very safe driver.
Well, see if you can fact check this. Your brother claims when he was a senior in high school and on his 50th birthday, he weighed the same amount. Can you confirm that?
I would believe it. Now, Steve has done a really good job of, he probably is about the same size now as he is in high school.
That's phenomenal. That's awesome. That is great.
And this is not bragging, okay? But one of the benefits of being a 280, 85 pound offensive lineman is I'm actually smaller now than I was in high school.
Nice.
I can't wear the stuff that was in my closet from that period because it's all too big.
Do you realize that I outweighed all but two of the linemen, and you were one of the two my senior year, and I was at like 185 or so.
And was Dewey the other one?
Yeah, Chris Lee didn't weigh that. Pat Fitch didn't weigh that. Anyway, we got 2 or 3 more minutes, Kevin, and I'm loving this trip down memory lane, and I really appreciate your time. You go to Auburn, you get a scholarship to Auburn to play for Pat Dye. Let's take a little bit through that time period, because that's a phenomenal period in Auburn's football history. What was that like for you?
It was a tremendous program. When you think about what Coach Dye did in the 80s and transforming that whole program, and just the level of talent that came in, like you said, from the Dothan area, James Joseph, and then Sean Smith was in there. And then later on, Alex Thomas. A lot of players that were from that area. We were pulling cream of the crop talent during that time, and just had some tremendous teams. And oddly enough, I'll be very quick because I know we're running short on time. What kind of got me on the map with Coach Dye and the recruiting staff was the Opelika game, because they saw me play at that game, and I kind of got on their roadmap. And then, of course, the next day, I think it was, I'm at the Auburn game, as a potential recruit or whatever. And Coach Dye comes up to me and says, "I was really impressed with how you played in that game. I haven't seen a big guy really move like that." So that was his exact words. And it kind of went on from there.
I want you guys, if you haven't seen it, in the photos I posted to promote my talk tonight with Kevin, there's an awesome exemplary picture from the state game where Kevin is right behind me. We're starting a play, but he's about to pull down the line. And that, to me, epitomizes what that season was like for you, having to move so quickly and so often down the line for various trap blocks or whatever the play may have been.
Yeah, that offense that we ran really was a big benefit, because it got to me, not that I was a fast guy. Dewey was probably, faster than me pulling and all that, but I learned how to be more maneuverable at 285 or whatever. No. And that was very important to help me get recruited later on.
Who was your roommate at Auburn?
Anthony Brown.
How often?
He's right up there with Manny, one of the finest individuals that, I've ever known.
Willie Banks says to tell you hello.
Hello, Willie. I hadn't seen you in a long time, my friend. That's just sad.
Number 63 says to tell you hello, Chris Lee.
Chris Lee. Hey, Chris.
Guys, of course, I'm talking with Kevin Collins. We're running through the season of 85. He goes off to Auburn after high school. He rooms with Anthony Brown, one of our former opponents. Even to this day, when was the last time you brought up our games against them?
Well, we talked about it a lot our freshman year. And at that point, between him and Quentin and all those guys, I really don't bring it up much anymore. It's just, it just doesn't feel ethical. No, I'm not a rub it in kind of person at all. And I know that that's sort of a source, as exhilarating as it is for us, it's a sore spot with them. So
that right there is the epitome. That's what I was saying earlier in our talk. Kevin was led by example, not by talking, but by doing. And Kevin, I want to thank you for your friendship. I want to thank you for being one of my protectors. I love this conversation tonight. This was an awesome run through a great time period for us and during our childhood, frankly. And thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Bernard. It's been a wonderful time.
Guys, as we do every Wednesday, conversations with Cougars. I got a whole bunch of good ones and some surprises coming up. Y'all continue to be safe. We will see you next Wednesday, 7 o'clock Central. Be well.